If you gave me 90 days to change a person's financial life, I would not begin with stock tips. I would not begin with a complicated budget. I would not begin with a perfect credit score. I would not begin with tax tricks, side hustles, or some new app that promises to organize chaos. I would begin with something much less exciting and much more powerful. I would begin with truth. Most people do not stay financially stuck because they are bad at math. They stay stuck because they are vague. They do not know exactly what comes in. They do not know exactly what goes out. They do not know how much of their life is built on assumptions, recurring leaks, quiet debt, and expensive habits that have started to feel normal. And because they do not know, they drift. That is what destroys most financial lives. Not one giant mistake. Drift. The source materials you gave me all point in the same direction, even though they package it differently. One uses a 6-month blueprint built around owning your numbers, building initial savings, eliminating bad debt, investing, increasing income, and automating the system. Another follows a similar 6-step sequence with slightly different savings thresholds and debt triage. The third compresses the same transformation into a 90-day reset with weekly steps, emphasizing brutal honesty, cutting expenses, automation, emergency savings, investing income growth, tracking net worth, and stretch goals. Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn, 12-File 0 Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn, 12-File 1 Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn, 12-File 2 Fay. That is the real pattern. Not financial tricks, not exotic intelligence. A sequence, awareness, control, safety, growth, expansion, automation. That is how ordinary people stop living paycheck to paycheck and begin building wealth. Now, if I had only 90 days, I would not waste them trying to make you look rich. I would use them to make you harder to kill financially. That is a much better objective, because money, used properly, should buy one thing above all else: margin room, the ability to think, the ability to wait, the ability to survive a bad month, a bad boss, a bad market, or a bad stroke of luck without turning your whole life into a panic sale. That is wealth in its early form, and it is available to many more people than the culture wants them to believe. The first month of those 90 days would be the month of confrontation. You sit down, you pull every statement, every bank account, every credit card, every recurring payment, every loan, every silly subscription, every quiet little drain that has learned how to hide in plain sight. The 90-day source says to start with the last 3 months of statements and categorize every expense into fixed expenses, discretionary spending, and debt payments, so you can finally see the average monthly spend and your real savings rate. Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn, 12-File 2 Fay the 6, month sources push the same idea from slightly different angles. One says to calculate the core numbers of take, home income, fundamental expenses, savings and investments, and fund spending. The other says to calculate take, home income, debt, essential spending, discretionary spending, and current saving and investing. Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn 12-File 0, Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn 12-File 1 Fay Good. That is exactly where I would begin, because the person who refuses to look at the numbers is not avoiding stress. He is renting stress and paying interest on it. One of the most destructive habits in all of finance is the ostrich effect, the tendency to avoid uncomfortable information because seeing it feels painful. Both 6-month scripts call this out directly, describing the habit of not opening statements or delaying looking at bank accounts after spending. Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn 12-File 0, Fay-Filocyte Fay-Turn 12-File 1 Fay, of course. Avoidance gives you emotional relief for an hour and strategic weakness for a year. I have no use for that trade. A real financial reset begins the moment your money becomes visible enough that you can no longer lie to yourself cheaply. So I would want 4 or 5 simple numbers on one page. Take-home income, essential living costs, discretionary spending, debt obligations, current savings and investments. That is enough to begin, not to finish. To begin. And then I would want one brutal question answered. At the end of a typical month, is there anything left? If the answer is no, then we know the machine is consuming everything. If the answer is yes, then we know the seed of freedom already exists. Even if it is smaller than you hoped, that one insight changes everything. Because a lot of people are not as broke as they think. They are simply leaking. That is different. Now, once the truth is visible, the second stage begins. Cut the fat, not your soul. Not every pleasure, not every joy. Just the obvious nonsense. The 90-day plan says to sort spending from largest to smallest, then ask where each category can be reduced by roughly 10 to 30% over the next 90 days. It uses examples like Uber spending, shopping, subscriptions, and expensive habits that felt normal until the numbers made them embarrassing. Faithfully cite Fay-Turn 12-File 2 Fay, that is adult behavior. The point is not to build a joyless life. The point is to stop confusing leakage with identity. Most people have a few categories where spending has drifted upward simply because no one was paying attention. Food delivery, ride shares, unused subscriptions, shopping that was really mood management, small entertainment charges, category creep everywhere. The 6-month sources say much the same thing in their own way. Cancel what you barely use. Cook at home instead of eating out. Pause non-essential purchases and stop pretending that convenience is harmless. Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 0 Fay Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 1 Fay. Exactly. Every dollar that stops leaking becomes an employee for your future. That is how I would want you to see it. Not deprivation recruitment. You are hiring money away from nonsense and putting it to work on freedom. That is a beautiful thing when you understand it correctly. Now, I would not waste the first month trying to save 6 months of expenses. That is too large for many people psychologically. I would borrow the stronger part of the 6-month skeleton and the sharper pacing of the 90-day theme. The early target should be 1 month of essential expenses, or at minimum the first meaningful 4-digit emergency reserve, if that is more realistic to begin with. One 6-month source says to save 1 month of fundamental expenses in month 2. Another says save either $1,000 or 1 month of essentials, depending on where you are. The 90-day source makes week 5 about reaching $1,000, then scaling toward 3 to 6 months. Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 0 Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 1 Fay Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 2 Fay. That is exactly how I would handle it. You need a win. A real one. A visible one. A reserve that tells your nervous system something it has not heard in a long time. We are no longer one bad week from chaos. That matters. People underestimate the psychological importance of the first proper cash buffer. $1,000 or 1 month of essentials will not make you rich, but it will begin making you less fragile. And once fragility declines, judgment improves. Judgment improves. That sentence matters more than most people realize. A person with no reserve does not think like a free man. He thinks like prey. Every unexpected bill becomes a threat. Every delayed paycheck becomes a crisis. Every workplace conflict becomes more dangerous than it should be because leaving may not be affordable. An emergency fund is not just money. It is a new emotional relationship to uncertainty. The 6-month scripts both frame this beautifully by saying saving is not deprivation, but freedom. They explicitly tell the viewer to reframe saving as buying freedom and peace of mind, not giving something up. Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 0 Fay Fay-File Site Fay-Turn 12-File 1 Fay. That is exactly right. Now, as soon as the first reserve exists, the third stage begins. Debt triage. Notice I did not say debt panic. Debt triage. Not all debt is identical. The source materials all acknowledge this in one form or another. They distinguish high-interest consumer debt from things like mortgages or student loans, and they recommend ranking debt by interest rate, then targeting the worst rates first. One recommends attacking anything above 8%. Another frames the dangerous zone more broadly around 7 to 12%. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-0 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-1 Fay, that is sensible. The precise threshold can vary. The principle does not. Bad debt is whatever is draining your future faster than your future can reasonably outrun it. Credit card balances, payday loans. High interest consumer financing. Rotating traps disguised as convenience. Those things do not merely cost money. They steal momentum. And momentum is one of the most valuable assets in any financial turnaround. So I would want every bad debt listed clearly balanced. Interest rate, minimum payment, due date. Nothing hidden, nothing rounded, nothing politely avoided. The 90-day source does something I like very much here. It recommends using credit card debt calculators to see how much faster the debt dies and how much interest is saved when even small extra monthly payments are added. It also suggests calling the card issuer and asking for a lower rate, because the worst they can say is no. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-2 Fay excellent. That is exactly how adults handle money, not by admiring the problem, by attacking the structure of the problem. Now some people need quick wins, others need pure efficiency. 6. Monthsour says use the avalanche method if you care most about mathematical efficiency, and the other concedes that the snowball method can work well for people who need visible momentum. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-0 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-1 Fay-Fine. I prefer efficiency, but I prefer completed progress even more. If the snowball keeps a fragile person in motion, good. Use it. The only thing I will not tolerate is drift. Drift is what kills people. Now, while debt is being attacked, the emergency reserve should still be deepened. This is where I want to steal from the 6-month skeleton intelligently. Monthsour says once the highest interest debt is cleared, build 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in a high-yield savings account. Another says do not get stuck hoarding cash forever and start investing while finishing the emergency fund. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-0 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-1 Fay. That is exactly the right transition. Safety first, then safety and growth together, not safety forever. This is where many people freeze. They become good savers and permanent non-investors because cash feels like progress. Cash is useful. It is not a complete plan. If your emergency reserve becomes an emotional fortress that prevents you from ever exposing long-term money to growth, then safety has become an excuse. I have no interest in excuses. I want structure. So somewhere in the 2nd month, and certainly by the 3rd, I would want investing to begin if the household has 1 month saved, destructive debt under attack or gone, and some monthly surplus available. Not because we need excitement, because we need time. The earlier you let time onto your side, the less money has to be forced later. All 3 sources say this in different language. The 6-month plans both insist that people should start investing earlier than they think, and the 90-day plan says stocks have historically offered the best long-term capital growth among common asset classes, and that index, fund investing, done consistently, is one of the simplest long-term wealth builders available. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-0 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-1 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-2 Fay. That is right. I do not need fancy here. I need durable employer retirement match first, if available. That is free money. The 26-month files both hammer this, calling it the easiest free money available, and effectively a 100% return on the matched portion. Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-0 Fay-Phyllosite-Fay-Turn 12-File-1 Fay. Yes, take the help. Then use the tax-advantaged account available in your country. The specifics differ by geography, but the principle is universal. Where you invest matters almost as much as what you invest in because taxes are friction and compounding likes low. Friction systems, both 6-month files make this point through country-specific tax advantage structures. Fe filicite fe turn 12 file 0. Fe felicite fe turn 12 file 1 fe. Exactly. Then buy broad productive assets, not stories, not ego, not the thing currently being shouted about. The 90-day file is especially clean here, recommending broad S&P 500 ETFs or similar broad market exposure as a passive low-cost way to own the productive engine of business over time. The 6-month scripts make the same argument more generally by steering beginners toward diversified index funds and ETFs rather than stock picking. Fe falicite fe turn 12 file 2, fe falicite fe turn 12 file 0, fe falicite fe turn 12 file 1 fe. That is exactly where ordinary people should begin. Not because it is sexy, because it works and it is survivable. And survivable is underrated. The greatest investing strategy in the world is useless if it is so complicated or so exciting that it encourages you to interfere with it every few weeks. I want boring compounds beautifully. Now, there is another thing the 90-day source gets exactly right: automation. It says that the secret to financial success is not discipline in the heroic sense, but removing the need for discipline wherever possible by automating bills, savings, and investments. The 6-month files say the same thing in different language, urging automatic transfers to savings and investment accounts and treating saving like a non-negotiable bill paid to yourself first. Fe felicite, fe turn 12 file 2 fe felicite, fe turn 12 file 1 fe felicite, fe turn 12 file 0 fe perfect. That is adult money management. You do not rely on your best intentions when your worst moods are inevitable. You automate what matters before your impulses get a vote. Bills, savings, investment contributions, debt paydown, everything possible should happen by default. Defaults are powerful. The world has used defaults against ordinary people for years. Subscriptions renew by default. Spending apps remove friction by default. Monthly obligations multiply by default. Find then use the same principle for yourself. Make wealth, building the default. Now the next stage of this 3-month transformation must be income expansion. I would be dishonest if I acted as though cutting spending alone creates financial escape for everyone. Sometimes the system has been cut as hard as it can be cut without turning life into punishment. When that happens, the future must be enlarged from the income side. All 3 sources agree on this. The 6-month plans make month 5 about increasing income through negotiating raises, switching jobs, monetizing skills, freelancing, or side work. The 90-day plan uses week 7 for the same purpose, urging people to seek raises. Job hop strategically where appropriate, develop higher value skills, or add side income through services and small hustles. Fe filicite fe turn 12 file 0, fe filicite fe turn 12 file 1 fe filicite fe turn 12 file 2 fe. That is right. Cutting costs has limits. Earning does not. But here too, I want clarity rather than fantasy. I am not interested in vague side, hustle enthusiasm. I want one concrete lever: ask for the raise, apply for the better role, acquire a monetizable skill, sell a service, build one extra stream. The 6-month sources mention digital skills, sales, AI implementation, tutoring, freelancing, dog sitting, and many other examples. The details do not matter as much as the principle. One additional few $100s a month can accelerate a financial turnaround dramatically when the system is already being repaired. Fe felicite fe turn 12 file 1, fe felicite fe turn 12 file 0 fe. Exactly. More fuel entering a repaired machine changes everything. More fuel entering a broken machine just creates more expensive drift. That is why order matters. See clearly first, cut the obvious nonsense, build the first reserve. Kill the destructive debt, start investing. Then accelerate income. That is the skeleton I want. Now let me say something about goals, because this is where many people keep sabotaging themselves. They want security, they want freedom, they want wealth, fine. What does that mean? The 90-day source says to define savings goals for the rest of the year, and then eventually set stretch goals for 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. It emphasizes that writing goals down materially increases the odds of acting on them. The 6-month source says to write every financial goal down, even if it feels unrealistic, and attach a time frame so that money can be allocated according to purpose. Fay Felicite Fay Turn 12 File 2. Fay Felicite Fay Turn 12 File 0 Fay. Exactly. A goal without a number is mood. A goal without a date is fantasy. The moment you assign both, the future gains weight. And once the future has weight, today starts meeting resistance. That is good. The future should resist stupid spending. If it does not, today will consume everything. Now, one reason these plans work is that they do not only deal with abstract finance, they deal with the largest ordinary decisions: cars, housing, credit cards. These matter because they are where normal choices become lifelong drags. The 90-day source devotes a full week to credit cards, describing them as a dangerous double-edged sword. Used with discipline and paid in full, they can build credit and generate perks. Used without discipline, their average APR turns convenience into a trap. Fay Felicite Fay Turn 12 File 2 Fay. That is exactly right. A credit card is not a personality. It is an amplifier. If you are disciplined, it amplifies order. If you are impulsive, it amplifies stupidity. That is why self-knowledge matters more than card branding. The 90-day source also adds weekly net worth tracking and periodic spending reviews, which I like very much because they turn vague financial guilt into visible progress. Fay Felicite Fay Turn 12 File 2 Fay. That is a good practice. Money should become visible enough that you can steer it. Guilt is useless. Visibility is useful. Now, if I were rebuilding one story out of these three, I would not present it as 6 separate months or 12 separate weeks. I would present it as one coherent transformation. In the first 30 days, tell the truth, see the annual reality, see the leaks, see the debts, see the surplus or lack of it. In the second 30 days, create safety and stop the bleeding. Build the first reserve, attack the ugliest debt, automate the essentials. Cut the obvious waste. In the third 30 days, build the engine start, investing, capture the employer match. Use tax advantage structures, automate growth, push income upward, set 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year targets. That is a powerful 90 days. Not because it makes you rich overnight. It will not. But because it changes the trajectory. And trajectory is what most people are really missing. The culture around money is full of spectacle. Get rich, retire fast, 10x your money, quit your job in 12 months. I have very little interest in spectacle. I am interested in systems. A repaired financial system does something more valuable than a viral money win. It starts giving you back your judgment. It reduces panic. It increases room. It lets you feel the difference between drifting and directing. That is worth a lot. And it is why I think a person can transform his financial life in 90 days, even if his bank account has not yet transformed on the surface. The visible money may still be modest. Fine. But the machine underneath has changed. Now the bills are automated. The debt is under attack. The reserve exists. The investments are live. The spending is visible. The goals have dates. The income has a growth plan. The person knows the numbers. That is no longer financial fog. That is structure. And structure compounds, just like money does. Better habits compound. Lower leakage compounds, automatic investing compounds. Career decisions compound. Clarity compounds. This is why I have always preferred quiet progress to loud declarations. Quiet progress has foundations. Loud declarations usually need rescue. If you handed me 3 months and asked me to build a new financial life, that is exactly what I would do. I would not chase drama. I would remove vagueness. I would replace drift with sequence. I would buy the person room before I tried to buy him glamour. And by the end of those 90 days, he would probably not feel rich. Good, that is not the goal. He would feel less trapped, less surprised, less vague, less owned by the month. That is a much better beginning, because once a person is less owned by the month, the year becomes easier to control. And once the year becomes easier to control, wealth is no longer a fantasy. It is just what happens when a repaired machine is fed consistently long enough.